Rule 34 Artists of Reddit. What was it like on the first time you started drawing porn? I had no idea what I was doing and drew really terrible anatomy. It really helped me realize that even for my SFW works, perfecting a character's anatomy is very important to do before clothing them. Now it's just the same as if I was drawing anything else, except I'm mildy horny during the process. Edit. I don't post anything on Reddit or under this name, by the way. Just a heads up. I often used porn as a reference for drawings because it's easy to find pictures of naked people of all sizes in every imaginable posture. So it wasn't that much of a leap. It was on Donbaru. You get a lot of likes and commissions. Easy money, but it gets old real quick. Don't know what people's deal is with tentacles. They always need more. I was inspired by Manara, who is a very fine artist. But he didn't only draw porn. You also start to understand things like why gynecologists aren't aroused by their work. My best friend, she's not a weeb by any stretch, has explained that tentacles in general came into hentai because penises had to be censored. So the search for something phallic that was acceptable through the censors wound up with tentacles. It kinda became its own thing from there. Tentacles are flexible in ways penises aren't. And don't block views the way bodies do. They also don't have restrictions on weight, positioning, or number, so you have a triple pen or more without any view obstruction. In poses that would be impossible in traditional porn involving humanoids. Edit. Come on, people. A brief glance at other comments shows that the fisherman's wife has been mentioned by upwards of 15 to 20 other people at this point. Stop. You start with your own unique style. But kinda like the Skyrim stealth archer meme. You eventually and inevitably end up drawing for furries. It was really embarrassing, lol. I had to put down my tablet pen and just contemplate every 5 minutes because I felt like an absolute fool. You, staring at the zoomed-in picture of a dick you're drawing, realizing that you've just spent 20 minutes carefully detailing realistic veins on that schlong. What the fuck am I doing with my life? Sometimes I see Rule 34 commissions my girlfriend is working on and I'm just really confused why somebody wants to have a drawing of that. It's a decent side income for her, and most people who commission art from her seem quite polite and reliable about paying compared to when she does other stuff like band logo commissions. They just request some really odd things. A giant robot fridge with a dick that comes out of the freezer compartment that's simultaneously screwing a furry skunk character and turning them into an ice cube was a pretty memorable, why? Moment. Posting for my since she does not use her Reddit. Pros: money is great. Nobody bitches and whines about paying in exposure. Most clients are polite. Cons: some requests make you hate human race. You can't even mention you are a female cause they will simp all over you. Some clients can be very picky about end products details, don't ask. What was it like first? Well, I had to change my underwear a couple of times. Being able to draw exactly what you imagine is something that's hard to describe without trying it out. When I first started sharing my art online, I used to get somewhere between 0 and 10 likes on it. After switching to NSFW, those numbers went to 100s and sometimes 1000s. I still haven't made any money out of this, but that's something I hope to be able to do in the future. It was the other day. Someone told me to do it. And it seems I always do what I'm told. Their suggestion and my talent yielded something the world should never have seen. I write instead of drawing, though I do follow lots of NSFW artists and spend a fair amount of time cursing their skill and my lack thereof. First time I decided to write a full hardcore story. I was on a work trip sitting idle in a hotel lobby while waiting for the next work thing to happen. While I had a lot of experience writing in general, most sex scenes were always gently wafting curtains. Turning off that filter and writing full on engorged cock and swollen tits was quite liberating. Otherwise, I was sitting at work, so it felt more or less like being a cheeky student writing swear words on the desk. Later, writing in private, the work was more inspiring. Once you've done it for a while, you start working off the craft a little more than off the urge. first story came out like dirty talk during sex. Lots of focus on using sexy words. Overly gratuitous moaning noises. Stuff like that. Stories nowadays go a little more like dirty talk while having breakfast the next morning. I was trying to do SMTH for my ex. I was getting into digital art for fun and I struggled with the human body and skin. So she told me to draw her from memory and I did and she liked it. So she told me to draw stuff for her from time to time, Wattpad fanfics basically. She described the character and I would draw them and she be like, oh yeah, it's odd seeing a representation. De KS hun. I felt awkward but it was hilarious too. I was pretty young, like 12yo or something, and I used to draw it when I was horny. That wasn't too often though. But it was interesting, weird and confusing. I didn't figure out myself yet. Lol. It took me years to notice I liked to draw NSFW for its artistic and narrative value, aside from titillating other people, and nowadays I'm trying to grow a NSFW Twitter account and see where it leads me to. Sadly, I haven't got tons of money from it. Just a few commissions. I've always wondered about the horniness levels of hentai artists. I assume for most it just becomes a job after a while. But if you're doing it for personal pleasure, how do you stay horny enough to finish the work? I feel like I would get halfway through, go jack off, and never touch it again. Damn. It's straight up like living a double life. I have a secret folder on my laptop filled with NSFW sketches that I've made of characters from my favorite anime's cartoons. I only draw these things when my girlfriend isn't at home and if she comes home unexpectedly. I close everything down as quickly as possible so she doesn't find out. I've had a few close calls and she can probably tell I'm hiding something. Sometimes I even worry she thinks I'm having an affair, when in reality I'm just drawing smutty cartoon pictures. Not a porn artist, but once I was 14 and I drew a man and a woman having an intimate moment on a paper. Next thing I find are my drawings being organized on my desk. My mom had went through them. I'm glad she did though, because now she thinks I'm straight. Okay, to be fair, I am definitely not a porn artist. I only draw it very occasionally. Mostly to get over art block, for some reason. Just drawing funny poses without worrying about clothing folds is great for busting art block. But I do remember the first time I drew something very explicit instead of just some boobs or suggestive content. I drew it in a teeny tiny notebook when I was like 16. Just some normal anime porn stuff. And then I got so embarrassed that I hid it at the bottom of a drawer. And then, later, I found it again, in a completely different spot. My mom found it at some point. She must have. However, neither of us have ever brought it up. Years later, I still think about it sometimes. I have a character that's got tentacles for hair, no relation to Splatoon, and is a femboy. He is very popular with my circle of internet friends. They've all commissioned me several times to draw him in varying outfits, poses, scenarios, etc. He's basically the only thing that can break my art block for similar reasons to what you listed. I am 90% sure my mom saw a drawing I did of him on a scrap of paper from a downward angle from the back while his skirt got blown up. She hasn't mentioned it and I'm scared to bring up my art around her now because of how scared I am that she'll bring it up and I'll have to explain that some of my closest friends have essentially formed a religion based around my squid-haired femboy OC. Annoying. The first time you try to draw anatomy you've never done before, it's a pain in the ass. Boobs are surprisingly hard to make look right. Then again, some people pull a Michelangelo and staple them on and it looks awful but no one notices. My mom was really angry because I drew a dog man with a 3-foot throbbing girthy cock in graphic detail on the hood of her 1994 Honda Acclaim in the style of Lisa Frank. She's yelling incoherent nonsense at me, some shit about, dude you're like 30, and, get the fuck out of my house, yeah with mom. Last week was tough, man. When I was really young, like 11 or 12, I drew a tasteful, furry pinup. Growing up in the 90s, you're exposed to lots of cute furries via cartoons. It was exciting because my religious upbringing blanketed nudity and the body with shame. My mom found it and gave me a talk that I was too young to be drawing like that. Several years later I would doodle stupid implied NSFW scenarios of my OCs with my friends from role-play groups multiple times weekly. Cut to the present where I draw a porn comic as my major hobby and take occasional commissions. Since it isn't my livelihood I can refuse the real crazy ones, people wanting nude art of 13-yo anime girls. For example, I legit love drawing porn. Though not an artist. But I have online friends who are digital artists and some of them draw Rule 34 drawings. They always share some of those arts with us and then express their embarrassment of drawing those. In high school I started covertly taking NSFW commissions to make some easy money, and it was a lot of just contemplating whether or not it was worth it to draw yiff and weird anime shit. And basically questioning just what in the solar fuck I was doing with my life. I was able to buy some sick video games with all that hentai dollar, but it did not make up for the pain of having to draw lewd furries. I don't draw, but I write erotica. The first time I wrote something was for an online friend. And I felt a bit silly. We share the same fetish. So it's not like I was trying to be into something I'm not. But the entire time I was writing it I kept thinking, he's paying me for this? The characters lack motivation. The premise is poorly researched. And the narrative is uncompelling. Every creative writing instinct I had was screaming at me and calling me names. And I just had to lock them away in a depraved little cage so I could finish and collect my dollar. The first time I wrote something for myself, though, it felt like I had to stop every 5 lines to get off so I could think clearly enough to continue. Regular porn is great and all, but there's a transcendent quality to making something for yourself, since you can custom make it to fit every single weird little desire you have. I don't think I ever finished that one cause the climax, hee hee ho ho punny, was, and still is, too much for me to get through. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and hit the notification button. See you next time.